I will get emotional about this, but every single period I have, I feel like hopeful again. It's like I still can't believe that this works.
Welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. We got a lot to get into. You have a very inspirational story and I want to get into that. But first, just to make sure we're all on the same page, let's define endometriosis, which is such a long word, or short form endo.
Well, A, I'm so glad you know how to pronounce it. And B, I just get so excited when we just get 101 with it because so many people don't even know what endo is. So, endometriosis is when the type of tissue that lines your uterus grows on the outside. So, when you think about that growing on the outside, you might think, oh, it's just growing a little bit out of the uterus, but it can grow onto organs. It can grow onto body parts, the liver, the lungs, the diaphragm, the appendix. So it's definitely a full body condition for a lot of people with endo.
Okay. Well, we're going to get more into the details later, but let's get into your story first. When did you start noticing that you had symptoms that eventually got diagnosed? I know it's a long road to diagnosis, but what were your first symptoms when you knew something was not going right? And how old were you at the time?
Well, I think that's the trickiest question because I didn't know that my symptoms were wrong. And I think that's the story of so many people with endo. You have these symptoms, you have painful periods, fatigue, GI issues, and you just think, well, this is how my body is. And a lot of us have moms and grandmas and aunts and sisters that also have these painful periods. And you think, well, this is just how our periods are in our family. So it's really sad to say, but I didn't really think of them as being anything wrong. I mean, looking back, now I know that I was in pain from my second period on when I was 12 years old. So it definitely started at a very young age. And I mean, things like I said, GI issues, urinary issues, these were things that I experienced from the first period on, but I just thought that they were normal.
Wow. And I know again that it was a long road to diagnosis. How did you go about assuming, like you did at the time, that these were just part of, going through that stage of life? Did you do anything to, naturally help tone down those symptoms, or did you
No, I
what were
did
you
the
doing at the time?
opposite. I did the opposite. I was eating Sour Patch Kids every day and not working out and having any sort of stress management practices. I mean, I was medicating with food, with drugs, like anything you could think of. And when I say drugs, prescription medication. But yeah, it really wasn't until I had a cyst rupture and I ended up in the ER that a doctor, well, this is the second time that a cyst ruptured, that I ended up into the ER, that a doctor suggested that I talk to someone, a gynecologist. So when I was diagnosed with endometriosis, I had never even heard the word before. So this wasn't a search. It wasn't a journey for the diagnosis. It was almost by mistake that I finally got diagnosed.
And you mentioned symptoms starting as soon as your second period. What was the timeline between that and being in the ER and having that ruptured cyst?
I was 28, 29 years old the first time that anyone, or actually probably 29 when I was finally diagnosed. It was the first time I'd ever heard the word before. So, yeah, I mean,
And I'm assuming you had your first period when you're in your early teens, or?
12. Yeah, it was
Okay.
12. So it's a long time to to have those types of symptoms. The average diagnosis time is 8 to 10 years.
Wow, that's incredible. Is that changing for the better in the last number of years?
Well, the diagnosis time hasn't changed yet. But I think that, you having me on your podcast or there being books, I mean, I think what's so amazing is you see so many more young people on TikTok and things actually talking about periods. They actually know the word endometriosis, that I think the awareness is helping more people get diagnosed sooner. And I don't know that that's because doctors are more educated about it. I think that patients are more informed and also more empowered to speak up for themselves.
So over that, I guess it was coming up on 20 years that you dealt with the symptoms before you actually knew what was going on. Did the symptoms progressively over that period of time get worse and worse, or was it pretty on par the whole time?
Oh, it definitely got worse over time. And
Of course, the
what's
rupture was the cap, like the climax. That's
yeah.
worse. But over that
Yeah.
period of time, talk about how things, waxed and waned, ebbed and flowed.
Yeah. Well, I think that they stayed consistent, but I think the thing that increased for me was definitely the mental health aspect. And I think that's something that I'm sure you cover a lot about, the mental health component when you're talking about chronic illness. And that was the thing, my period pain stayed consistent, all of my other systems stayed consistent, but the sadness, the anxiety, and depression I have just increased year by year. And, the BBC did a study for endometriosis, and they interviewed 13,500 people with endo, and nearly half of those people said that they had suicidal thoughts. So this is something that, you know, again, when you have a chronic illness, sometimes you feel so alone in it that was the thing that I felt like I had no control over anymore. Because the period pain, I was thinking, well, this is just how it is. But the mental health part, I just really questioned what was wrong with me.
And did the mental health aspect, did that start at an early age or did that take a number of years?
Yeah, I think it's so hard to connect the two, right? Because I think when you're in high school, you're already maybe awkward. I was definitely the indie kid that was kind of a weirdo. So I think it was that on top of bleeding through my pants at school, on top of having to miss a lot of things with family and friends, and just the idea of waking up every day being in pain. And I think, when you're in high school, it's one thing, but as you start to date and have relationships and think about your future and have, your first job, and you have this chronic illness disrupting so much of that, it definitely increases how you feel about yourself and how you navigate the world.
And leading up to that diagnosis, again, so many years of dealing with these symptoms, how aware were people in your life of the extremity of what you were going through? Family and friends, you know, different doctors. I'm sure you were probably pursuing different healthcare providers to seek answers for this. How aware were people of what you were going through and how much of it were you able to mask and just push through?
Oh, I definitely am the queen of masking and pushing through. I think I should win an award for that. I definitely think, like I said, my mom, she definitely experienced all these things too. So it was something that I was not embarrassed to talk to her about it, but we didn't see it as a problem. And in terms of my friends, my friends, there was one woman in my life named Meg in high school who she had painful periods, but she just took a leave and it was good. So I didn't really talk about it because I just thought it was normal for my body. Like why complain about something that you think is normal for your body?
And when it comes to having endo, how much of it has to do with lifestyle factors? Like, where's the research at right now these days with, the genetic factor versus lifestyle versus other things? And in your case, what do you think was the biggest player?
The tricky thing is that we still don't know why endo happens. And I think in terms of lifestyle, I think it sometimes, and I know you're just asking the question, you're not implying that it's because of lifestyle, but I think sometimes when we talk about lifestyle, it's very easy to blame your childhood, past trauma. There's a lot of people that say that endo is caused because of past sexual trauma. I think that's a very dangerous place to be for people because we don't know what causes endo, and genetics are a huge part of it. I don't think it happens because of past trauma. They do think maybe environmental factors, they do think there's some immune factors involved, but we don't know what causes it. And so, I just chalk it up to we still don't know.
And speaking of the genetic factors, I know at least at this point you talk about in your book how your mother and your sister have endo. I'm assuming it's a confirmed diagnosis. Is that the case? And did they get diagnosed after you?
Well, my sister actually got diagnosed before me, but I talk about in the book a lot how we didn't get along for a very long time. And now we know because we were in so much pain, it was hard for us to even to connect. But yeah, I found out that my sister got diagnosed long after I did through my mom. When I was diagnosed, it was the first time my mom had heard of endo. She had a hysterectomy at 46. And yeah, it's so wild how so many people in your life might have this without even realizing it. And I actually, pre-COVID, I would go and talk to high schools, to girls about endometriosis and painful periods. And the cool thing about that is I'm not just educating them, but they were young enough to take this information home to their moms and to their grandmothers and maybe help them understand why they've been feeling the way they have for so long.
That's incredible. And let's fast forward to age 28. When you get the diagnosis, you said it was your second cyst, I believe, that had ruptured. You went to the
Yes.
ER. You ended up going to a gynecologist, getting that diagnosis. Talk about the mental aspect at that point. What did it feel like to finally, after all these years, know what was going on within your body?
I don't know why that question just made me so emotional. I I think that for a lot of people with endo and myself included, you think that it's going to be this glorious day of having confirmation of what's wrong with you. But I know for myself, the first thing the first thing I did when I went home is I Googled it. And when I Googled it, like, at this time, this is a long time ago, there wasn't podcasts like yours, there wasn't books on the topic. And all I found was, I call it the gloom and doom endo vortex. It's just, you can't have kids, you'll have to get a hysterectomy. There was nothing hopeful about what I found. And so, as much as that diagnosis helped me feel like I wasn't quote unquote crazy, it also put me into this new space of, well, how am I going to deal with this for the rest of my life? Because I had no management tools. As much as I am so grateful for that doctor for diagnosing me, she didn't give me any information about it when I left the hospital. So, and I think that's the one of the hardest parts for people with endo is you get the diagnosis, but you're not told, but now what? And this is a huge reason why I wanted to write my book, is because we have to know now what, because this is something that we're going to have to manage for as long as we have periods.
Well, let's get to your now what. You get home, you find the gloom and
Okay.
doom, you do some searching online. What do you do next?
Well, it wasn't immediate. I mean, I definitely spent 5 or 6 years with the diagnosis not getting any better. I was put on birth control, and I'm not dissing birth control. If someone finds it helpful for them, it was not helpful for me. It caused a lot of mental health issues for me. And it didn't get better. And it's when I was faced with a hysterectomy that a friend of mine sort of swooped in, and she just sent me an email with a link to how lifestyle, specifically food, could potentially help my inflammation. And when she sent me that link, that you read in the book, I thought it was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard, and almost rude for her to suggest that this could help me in any way. But I tried it, and my whole life changed. And I want to be clear that it wasn't just the food that helped me, begin to feel better with endo. That was just the gateway to so many other practices that now helps me manage my endo. Does it help it go away? No. I mean, just last week, I actually had another cyst that burst. I can't control my endo growing. I can't control cysts from bursting, but what I can do is manage it on a daily basis to at least be able to get out of bed and enjoy my life on the not cyst bursting days.
You talked about your initial move when you got that diagnosis was to go on birth control. How typical is that? Is that basically what conventional medicine does for people when they get this diagnosis?
Yes. Well, generally, you're told, and this might be a shock to a lot of people that are listening, most people are told to go on birth control, get pregnant as a treatment, which is the one that is just the most shocking and appalling treatment option, that a baby is not a treatment for a condition. A lot of people are told to go on drug hormone therapies. A lot of people are told to get a hysterectomy. So there's not a lot of options out there once you are out of surgery as to what to do next. And so, yeah, so birth control, my doctor said that I had to be on birth control, to the point that when I went on it and I asked to not be on it anymore, she had her office call me once a week to get back on it. And at that point, I had to, see another doctor because it just didn't make me feel good. So yeah, so I think that's the other thing is that, obviously doctors are amazing. I had a doctor perform a great endo surgery and a surgery on me. They save our lives, but they don't always know everything about your body and how it's going to react to certain medications like the pill.
And you mentioned briefly there that being on the pill affected your mental health in a negative way. Can you talk more
Yes.
about the details of what that was like?
I mean, I remember so clearly the day that I decided that I didn't think birth control was for me. I was sitting on a plane going to LA, just nothing was happening. My husband is the most supportive, kind human on earth. Texting him, I thought we should get a divorce. Like just out of nowhere because I was upset about something else. It was affecting my mental health in ways I cannot describe. It was making me depressed. It was making me have anxiety. I just remember being curled up on the floor, just crying for no reason. And I think if anyone is interested in learning more about that, or if you've struggled with how birth control can impact you, there's a lot of great books on the topic because not all of our bodies are designed to have those hormones, and mine was not.
And being in this endo community, and I'm sure you hear a lot of different stories. You do a lot of interviews in your book. Have you heard of other women being on the pill and experiencing a similar situation?
Yes. And I think that's the wildest part about it is that because you hear of so many people documenting these experiences, I would like to know when I'm given that pill, hey, you might have suicidal thoughts. Hey, you might have increased anxiety because they definitely tell you the other risk factors, but that's not one that I was ever told about. So then I thought that I hate to use the word crazy, but I really did feel like I was out of my mind.
You mentioned your husband there. I'm curious, when did you guys get together along your endo journey? And let's talk about how you went about, because I think this, I'm obviously not somebody that's I'm a male. I haven't experienced endo, but let's talk about how you went about bringing that up to him, because I can assume that a lot of people dealing with this, whether they've been in a relationship for a bit and they've managed to mask it, or if they're getting into a new relationship, wouldn't know how to bring that up with a partner. So, where along
Yeah,
the
and
journey does he come into the picture, and how do you go about introducing him to this condition that you're dealing with? And
that
again, at that time, I'm
is
assuming you're not diagnosed, but
yeah, I was not diagnosed. This is such a good question too because endo impacts all aspects of your life. Relationships are such a huge part of it. So, I good or bad, I'm a very open and maybe too vocal person sometimes. So I very soon, it was actually our second date and we were supposed to go out and I called him and I told him, "Look, I have a really bad period. I can't go." And this is pre-internet, Uber Eats, everything, and he showed up at my door with every menu from the restaurants in our college town and said, "Here, I'll go bring the food to you." And obviously knew if this dude is cool with bad periods, then this is the person for me. So, you know, it was part of our relationship from the beginning. And, you know, I I sometimes, because it's so part of our relationship, I sometimes have to step back and think about how does impact him. And that's a huge part of my book is how to talk to your partner about this. And I also for my book interviewed partners of people with endo, and some of them said some of the hardest things for them is to know when to offer to help, because I think when you deal with a chronic condition, there are some times when you want to hug, there are some times when you want someone to deliver food to you, but there's a lot of times when you don't want anyone to talk to you, you just want to be left alone. So as a partner, it's hard to know sometimes, I think, when to help and when not to help. And on the flip side, I interviewed someone in my book that got to a point in her relationship where her partner was so unsupportive and didn't believe her pain that she had to end that relationship. So I think that, you know, when we're talking to people and we're sharing with new people in our life about endo, I always like to say that, talk to them how they like to receive that information best. I mean, I think some people are very analytical and scientific. Maybe you share a journal article with them. Or if it's someone that loves films, maybe you share an endo documentary with them. There's a great one called Endo What. I think everyone receives information in different ways. And I think it's about meeting that person when they are sometimes.
Got it. And you touched on this quickly. I think it is important we go a bit deeper into it, where we've covered now introducing it to a partner. But say you're in a relationship with somebody and you've been open with them, they know you have endo and they're aware of, the symptoms that you're dealing with. How do they know when you quickly mentioned knowing when to give space and when to jump in and help? How do we know if we're somebody in that situation, when it's time to jump in? And when it is time to help, what is the best way?
Yeah, I think that's just something that you have to get very clear with your partner on. I mean, I know that for myself, I have a son, he's 6, and a lot of times my husband and him once a month they go get a hotel room. That's like a thing. It's like some bonding time for them and that's a way for me to be alone. A lot of times they do that around my period because he knows that I like to be alone during the first couple of days, but I also like to have some food in the fridge ready to go. So I think it's just being really, really open with your partner. And, one thing that I did in my book was I interviewed a psychologist who specifically works with people that have endometriosis. And she said, one great thing that you can do with a partner is just really check in before you share. So that might be, hey, can you talk right now? As opposed to just unloading. Because I think, sometimes we'll share with someone, maybe we fire off a long text to a friend about how we're feeling or to our partner, and then we don't get the response that we want. But we also don't know what they're going through in that moment that they're receiving it. So I think with our partners, just checking in with them and saying, is it okay if I share with you right now? Would you mind helping me with this? Because I think it can also be a lot for our partners as well.
Let's jump back to your story, the point where you get this email and somebody introduces you to the fact that diet might be able to help you with your condition. First of all, who is this person that reached out?
Her name is Amanda. I actually dedicated my first book, my cookbook, One Part Plant, to her. And she is my friend. She lived in LA at the time. She was visiting me in Chicago. And I remember it so well because I definitely hid my pain from her. And I, she saw me kind of catch myself on a table because I was in so much pain. And she just was like, what's going on? And I really shared with her the pain I was going through and how I was looking to get a hysterectomy. And she took it upon herself, went home. And, I like to say it wasn't this elaborate email. It was literally an email with a link. That's it. Like if that would have gone to spam or I would have just been like, ugh, whatever. I can't imagine where I'd be right now. I mean, I truly give her so much credit for changing my entire life.
Wow, what a pivotal moment. And how far away was the surgery scheduled? How much time did you have before that was going to happen?
So that was the summer, and my plan was to get the hysterectomy during the winter because I thought, if you're going to be recovering from that, it's nice to be cozy in bed in Chicago winter. But yeah, so I was thinking winter for the surgery.
That makes sense. And let's talk about what your diet was like at that time. We're going to get to the diet that you ended up following, and I'm guessing there may have been an evolution there. We'll get into that. But let's talk about what you're eating at that time and if there was an evolution before that point.
Okay, well, I ate no vegetables. I mean, maybe if spinach was on pizza or spaghetti or something. I was not into vegetables. I ate a lot of frozen meals because I didn't know how to cook at all. Like I think I talked about in my first book, I actually burned rice the first time I ever made it. I did not cook at all. So it was very, and I don't like to diss anyone's diet because everyone is on their own diet food journey, but it was very standard American diet. It was a lot of frozen things, a lot of processed things, a lot of packaged things, and it had a lot of candy and Diet Coke involved as well.
Okay. So you click on this link. Where does it take you?
I wish that I could still find this website. It doesn't exist anymore. It was a very outdated. it was like blog 1 point, like 0.0. It was so outdated. I don't even know why or how Amanda found it, but it just listed foods that could potentially help inflammation or to reduce inflammation. And like I said earlier, I thought there was zero chance that this would work. Like zero. But I don't know. I felt compelled to just give it a shot because I had nothing to lose.
What were some of the foods on that list?
So a lot of the foods that they said to take out were dairy, meat, sugar, which was very difficult for me because of my candy addiction. Canned foods, which I don't necessarily agree with that much. Chocolate, basically everything you can think of was alcohol, chocolate. And I definitely modified that list into what I felt like I could do at the time. But yeah, it was all of the huge inflammatories. But no one had ever even knew nothing about inflammatory foods at all. So this list was a shock to me. It was just a shock.
So did you buy into it right away, or was it the kind of thing where you bookmarked it and then came back to it in a number of days?
I cannot tell you why, but I decided to try it. And I remember I had gone to see a new doctor to get a second opinion about the hysterectomy. And he also suggested that I get a hysterectomy. And in that meeting with him, he suggested that I could probably try acupuncture to help reduce my inflammation. And that was also the first time I had heard about acupuncture or anything like that. And in my mind, I thought, well, if this guy's suggesting something holistic, what if this diet thing could also be something that's something? So, I mean, did not do acupuncture at all, but I thought this diet is sort of like an inexpensive way to try this. And at the time, I mean, I was also thinking maybe I could lose a little lbs trying this too. Like I didn't know, but I knew that I would try it for 3 weeks, see what would happen, and I'd end up probably getting the surgery anyway.
LBs, what is that?
Pounds.
Oh, okay, pounds. Okay, I'm in Canada, so
I think it's just a phrase that my dad uses, so it's okay.
nice. How many doctors? You mentioned this doctor that poked a hole in the veil and talked about diet. It sounds like that was the first step to being open to this link that you opened later on. How many doctors at that point in your journey had you seen dealing with your symptoms?
I mean, so many, but again, they were not gynecologists. I saw a doctor about my urinary issues. I saw a doctor about my GI issues. So none of these doctors, I mean, I have no idea. I don't know. I've lost count at that point how many doctors. I mean, I remember in college, the first time I had sex, and within, the first couple times of having sex, it was so painful that I went to the college doctor or whatever the student place was. And I told the doctor how painful sex was. And her suggestion was to relax more in bed. So I had seen all of these doctors, which is the most harmful thing to say to a young person having sex, not knowing why she was having that painful sex. And that's a huge symptom of endometriosis. So when we talk about how many doctors I saw so many, but it wasn't even because of my painful periods. It was because of all of these other symptoms that I was having.
And this doctor that mentioned diet for the first time to you, or this alternative way of eating, do you think if he hadn't have planted that seed, you would have responded the same way to getting that email from your friend?
I don't think so because, the doctor didn't mention diet. He only mentioned acupuncture. And the funny
Oh,
thing
okay.
is I actually brought that doctor because I felt grateful that he kind of planted the seed about the acupuncture. I actually brought him a batch of plant-based cookies that I made after I changed my diet, after everything changed. And he laughed it off. He's like, diet does not do anything for endo.
Okay, so I have the
So,
timeline wrong. He came afterwards, and at
yeah,
that point,
yes.
you were plant based, and he was
Well,
he was
no,
introduced,
he just mentioned acupuncture. That's it.
but
So
he
in
came
my
after the
mind,
email or before. I just want to get the
he became
timeline right.
before he came right after the email.
After, okay, I thought it was
Right.
before. Okay,
So before or after, whatever he said about acupuncture, I thought maybe this food thing could work too.
got it.
And it was a tiny seed, but it was one that I thought Well, more people are talking about holistic treatments. Maybe I should try this.
Take me through the early days of the diet. What do you adopt first? How do you go about finding these recipes, and how does your husband respond to this? Because you guys are married at the time, and oftentimes, one person does the cooking. In your case, was that the case? Were you sharing meals and cooking together? Or?
Well, he ate very healthy. He was steaming kale and eating healthy while I was eating ice cream with Lucky Charms on top. Like, I mean, it was not, it was, he did not have to come around to this. It was me coming around. And I give him so much credit for never saying anything about my diet or saying I told you so or anything, because he embraced it with me because he was really already eating that way. But the first 3 weeks to 2 months of this, I cried all the time. I thought it was horrible to change my diet. I missed cheese. I missed candy. At that time, there wasn't Instagram or amazing food blogs that I could just hop on and find new recipes. It was, really trying to find cookbooks that were not that cool. And it was, I felt very lonely in it. As much as Dan, my husband, had eaten a little bit, had eaten healthy, steamed kale, I had zero interest in that. I wanted things that felt comforting to me or felt like things that I used to eat but happened to be plant-based. And, now we have so many amazing options, but back then there was not those types of options. So yeah, I write in my cookbook, for the first month I ate a corn tortilla with salsa on top because I thought, well, it's kind of like a taco. I know how to make salsa. This is like the one thing I know how to make. And, eventually I just was like, okay, this is actually working. I need to teach myself how to cook. I need to find meals that I'm excited about and not cry about this anymore.
So was the diet vegan, vegetarian, or how would you
Yeah,
label
it
it?
was I went completely plant-based, and, I will say what I did that first couple months is I told myself, you can eat cheese, you can eat dairy once a week." And then that turned into every 2 weeks, and then that turned into once a month, to the point where I'm like, "I actually don't really feel great when I eat dairy." So, the last thing to go was definitely the Sour Patch Kids and candy. It took me a long time to let them go, because when you change your whole diet, you still kind of want to hang on to some of that comfort. And yeah, I hung on to candy for a while.
So you make this radical shift. You're eating healthy. Um, how long does it take before you start noticing a difference in how you feel?
So soon. And not just in how I feel. I mean, I had friends come up to me 2 or 3 months into it and say, "You're so much nicer now." I'm like, I'm not in pain. I think that that's the thing that people don't understand sometimes with chronic conditions, is that if we come off as grouchy or we come off in a bad mood, so many times we're actually in pain. So it wasn't just the physical part that I was feeling better, it was the mental part. I was nicer. And, having less inflammation in my body meant that I was able to get out of bed more, which meant that I could move my body again more. It was just this chain reaction that just led to so many amazing changes in my life.
I can imagine a big part of the uplifting feeling at that time would have been hope, because you had been through
Yes.
such a journey to that point and seen so many doctors and tried so many things, and you must have felt pretty hopeless. And then to see
Yes.
that, relatively quickly things start to turn around. I can only imagine. You mentioned the mental aspect, like it must have been so uplifting.
Yeah, and it was uplifting at that time. And I mean, I've made this change now for 10 years, and I will get emotional about this, but every single period I have, I feel like hopeful again. It's like I still can't believe that this works. It's something that I feel so, every single period I have, I will actually mention at least one time during the week, "Look at me. Like, I'm out of bed. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this." I still am surprised by it, and I'm still grateful for it every single month.
That makes a lot of sense. Like a lot of things in life where you have to suffer and see the low to really appreciate the high.
Yes, definitely.
So, in the beginning, was it diet alone that you made a big shift, or was there other lifestyle factors that you included too?
Yeah, I mean, it was diet at first for sure. I mean, I was very anti anything wellness. So I remember just, anyone saying like namaste, I would roll my eyes. Like I couldn't, it was not into anything wellness. And so it started with the food. And that just really kind of opened up my mind to, I'm not walking around saying namaste to everyone, but it's opened up my mind to more wellness practices or just kind of investigating more of how things can help inflammation, how things can help our mental health. So it started with the food, and it was just the catalyst for me having a more open mind. And I think that's the thing that was the biggest change that the food made was obviously the physical, but it making me more open.
Let's talk about some of the other things that you tried lifestyle wise, and what were the ones that had the biggest impact?
I think moving my body in different ways. And I mean, I still to this day, I'm still learning what works for my body and what doesn't. But I definitely was very all or nothing about movement. And, I was always the last person in the gym class to run. I mean, I can run for about 2 minutes before I'm like, this is not for me. And so I really thought that movement had to be flipping tires, running a marathon, or nothing, or yoga. And I think I really started to explore different ways that I could move my body that made me feel good. So trying a mat Pilates class, trying, one thing that I love so much is my rebounder, like my little mini trampoline. Like that gives me so much joy when I get on that thing. So really starting to connect joy with movement, but also not having this all or nothing mentality and being able to wake up and say, what is my body capable of today? As opposed to, well, if I can't do that one thing today, I can't do anything. So movement is a huge one for me.
And when it comes to movement, you talk about different aspects of what that's helping when it comes to endo in the book. And a couple of them I want to talk about is the lymphatic system and fascia. You really get
Hmm.
into the fascia. This is
Yes.
something we haven't, I'm trying to think over the years. I'm sure it's come up, but it's not something we've gone really deep into. So let's talk about specifically when it comes to endo, why that's important.
Oh my gosh. The movement chapter of my book blew my mind the most. Just talking about the fascia, I interviewed Heba Shahid, who is a physical therapist who works specifically with people that have endo and pelvic conditions. And when you have endo or you have chronic pelvic pain, you're constantly tightening yourself. You're in a ball on a couch, you're laying down. And so your muscles and joints and everything is just really tightening. So it's so important to be smoothing out that fascia, being able to smooth out the tissues and the joints and kind of, she says motion is lotion. So I had never really thought about that because, if you think about it, if you're in pain and you're clenched up, you're actually going to be creating a more stiff body and more pain for yourself. So being able to use, let's say, a foam roller. And in the book, there's a bunch of foam roller exercises. Like, again, I thought foam rolling was only for people that ran marathons and did CrossFit that, needed to work out their muscles and recover. Foam rolling can be such an incredible tool for people that have chronic pain and are constantly tightening up their body. And just what's so cool about foam rolling too is so much of our body is connected to that pelvic area. So just rolling out your booty or the back of your legs, just you're not supposed to, roll on your abdominal muscles, but just rolling out other parts of your body can just release so many things. And I just I think that's the biggest thing that, changed for me even just while writing that book is you hear so much about movement helping with mental health and with heart conditions and having a healthier body, but we don't really think of it as actually helping our tissues and muscles and just becoming, I don't know, more comfortable in our body with endo.
And when it comes to fascia, you describe it in the book, you use a great analogy. It's like saran wrap covering the muscles and the organs. And it is something you mentioned, like rolling your glutes, having an impact on a different area. It runs all through the body and crisscrosses. So it's something that I don't think is addressed enough. And I'm glad you dedicate a good part of your book to bringing awareness to that.
Yeah, the saran wrap analogy is all I think about now. It's like, how can I kind of uncrinkle things? And I think that visual, if you're a visual person, it's so much more helpful to think about that versus I have to go run to lose weight. It's like I just need to uncrinkle this saran wrap.
And when it comes to the lymphatic system, you mentioned using a rebounder, which is like a small trampoline. What
Mhm.
other ways can we go about making sure that system is regularly flushed and maintained?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting when I was researching the lymphatic system for the book because it's just, some people say it's as simple as drinking water, right? It's I mean, I think that there's small ways that we can do it, but definitely with the foam rolling, the rebounder, I actually am getting starting to get lymphatic massage. And I know not everyone has that in their city or it's available to them, but it's something I'm really excited to start doing because when you have endo, I mean, I think so much of the lymphatic system is connected to inflammation and anything that we can kind of do to sort of help that is huge.
I want to come back to the diet and get back to the story on that. So in the beginning, it starts working for you pretty quickly. Do you experiment and try any big shifts in that diet, or is this still the same diet that you're on today?
That's such a good question. I mean, I think that I think that with endo and just not even if you don't have endo, I think our bodies change so much over time that I think that when you start with one diet, that might not be a diet that works for you forever. And I had a big endo surgery in 2018. And after that surgery, I started to experience some different gut health issues. And that happens a lot of people that have any sort of abdominal surgery. Some people, there's a higher rate of having SIBO and some other gut health issues. So I had to modify it a little bit. And it was frustrating to me at first because I thought, okay, so I have this diet nailed. I know exactly what I need to eat. But our bodies change over time. And I think it was a huge lesson for me to have to adapt. And I think that's why in the book I write so much about I don't believe that there is one endo diet for all. I think that your endo diet is unique to you. And I call it good foods, which are foods that don't make you feel bad. And that might change over time. So the past year had to heal my gut a little bit. I tapped into more low FODMAP foods for a while and it's getting so much better. But it was kind of a rude awakening for me who thought I had nailed it and then I had to tweak it again.
That's such a good point. Even if something, we are all different, so not one diet's going to work for everybody. And, life, we change so much over a lifetime. To think one diet the exact same way is going to work over such a long period of time is in my opinion pretty naive thinking. So it's good that you're open to that evolution. I'm curious, do you mention your son and we've talked about your husband. Do you guys all eat the same thing as you made this switch? Does everybody embrace that diet or do you all eat a little bit differently?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we all eat the same. I mean, my son was born after I changed my diet. So he's eating the way that we do. And, you know, it's interesting when you have a 6-year-old, right? Because you serve him all his meals, you make the decisions a lot of times for them, but we don't eat meat in our house. We don't buy dairy. He's definitely had ice cream cones with his grandparents, and I never shame him or say that these are bad choices. But yeah, we all eat together. And it's definitely, I think, the question I get most from people about food is how do I change with my family because I have a resistant teenager, or most oftentimes I have a resistant partner. And I think I have not had to experience that with my family. I definitely think when I changed my diet, I did experience that some with my friends. It's like, why are you doing this? And I think it's just so important to actually have a conversation with them and just say, I'm not doing this to be cool, to follow a trend. I'm doing this to feel better for myself. It actually has nothing to do with you. I want to feel better. And by feeling better, I can be a better friend, a better parent, a better family member. So I think that change is hard for so many family members or friends because they think that you're taking away something from them in some way because you're not sharing the same food traditions anymore. You're serving different things at Thanksgiving. But ultimately, they have to understand this is for you. It's for you to feel better. But I think sometimes that's hard for people to understand because they think it is, I don't know, something about them or something.
And I'm guessing a lot of times, like with close family and friends, when they see you feeling better and see, revived energy, less pain, and then the dietary switch that goes along with it, that must make them more receptive of seeing you, make this shift in the way you eat.
Yeah, I think so. I still hear from people a lot. They still get pushback from family and friends, but I think yeah, you the only thing you can do is lead by example and just, I always like to say too if you are going to an event or a family function or a Thanksgiving dinner, just always bring something you can eat that is so delicious that other people will ask for the recipe and they're like, "Oh, wait, this is plant-based?" Okay.
That's great advice. And in your house, who does the cooking? Is it both you and your husband?
Yeah, he did the cooking for, we've been married for 20 years now, and he did the cooking for the first 10. So I try to, make up a little bit for lost time. But yeah, we both do the cooking.
And over the years, has supplementing with specific supplements been helpful to you with your condition?
You know, the supplement question is so tricky because there isn't really any concrete evidence to support what supplements can help with endo. I know for myself, not eating meat or dairy, I definitely am always on top of my B12, D. I definitely think that turmeric can help with anti-inflammatory. There's a great supplement I love called Semaine, which definitely helps with my menstrual pain. It's not a legal supplement everywhere, but THC helps me a lot with my endo pain as well. So, with the supplement chapter of my book, I probably could have listed 100 that people say have helped them. But I think with supplements, it's so unique to your body that I always think it's good to talk to a doctor about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's get more into the cannabis. You tell the
Okay.
story in your book how you weren't somebody that experimented with weed as a teen in
Mm-mm.
your 20s, but then in your 30s, there was I'll let you take the story, but somebody introduced you to it and you found it really helpful for your pain. So,
Oh my gosh. And I saw this tweet the other day that said, if you want free weed, tell someone that you've never done it before and you'll get all the free weed in the world, cannabis. But yeah, my friends were very excited when I first tried it because, I had never tried it. The first time I tried marijuana was when I was 33 years old, cannabis. And I just immediately, for the first time, my body just relaxed. And it was a feeling that I had not felt. Again, we talked about, your body being clenched all the time when you have chronic pain. And it wasn't the high that I liked necessarily, the head high. It was the fact that I was giving my body a break just for that time. And so it did get to the point where I think I was maybe doing a little too much in the beginning. I got a little bit excited that it was working so well. So now I just stick to it the first few days of my period, or if I'm feeling a lot of back pain or fatigue. It's just amazing.
do you ever worry that because that allows you to feel so good, you're able to push your body a little bit further and then maybe a couple days down the line be, sore or uncomfortable because you've maybe pushed it too hard?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I will say that I'm too paranoid to be high during the day, so I only take it right before bed. So I'm not really pushing. I'll take it about 2 hours before I go to bed. So I'm not pushing myself at all. But I love that question because the cyst that I just had rupture a couple weeks ago, I rode a Peloton bike for the first time. I actually am blaming the Peloton ride for the cyst rupturing, but I it was on my friend's Peloton, so I wanted to make sure that I kept her ranking good. I don't really know a ton about Peloton, but I went hard because I felt like I can do this. Oh my gosh, I'm so amazing. And of I didn't keep in mind my pacing that I know that I need to do for my movement, which is not intense exercise. And my cyst burst. And it's
While you were on the bike?
right after I got off the bike. And I know, so I had a cyst, a 4 centimeter cyst. This intense pain and bleeding happened after I just got an ultrasound. The cyst is gone. So that intense workout, because it was so abdominal, because I was going so hard, and it's a tricky thing with endo sometimes to think in your mind what you're capable of and what your body is actually capable of. And it is a huge disconnect for myself because I think I can do anything. And I oftentimes will have moments like that where I'll go on a very intense hike and then the next day I'm ruined, and not ruined in a way that like, oh, my joints are a little bit sore like maybe someone else, but I push my body way too hard for what my body was capable of. And so I'm constantly trying to remind myself of what my best is, my personal best, because it's not always what my mind thinks I'm capable of.
I see what you're saying there. And sticking with cannabis in that realm, what about CBD oil? Is this something that you're a fan of, or have you found that it's helpful for your symptoms?
Yeah, people swear by CBD with endo. I don't think I've ever taken it consistently enough that I feel this miraculous aha moment with it. I definitely will say that when I take it with THC, it's a very I actually really enjoy it. Juna is a brand that I love that actually has developed a certain line of CBD to help women with endo. So I know people love it. I've never used it consistently, I think, just to see a big difference.
Gotcha. Let's come back to the part of the story when you were set for a hysterectomy and you ended up, opting out of going that route down the line. Let's talk about different surgery
Hmm.
options. If people decide to go that route, you didn't end up with a hysterectomy, but have you had surgery to remove some cysts over
Definitely.
time? Okay. And let's talk about there's two different types of surgery that you talk about in the book,
Right.
and one of them that you're recommending and one that's not necessarily as good. So
Yeah.
I think this is important for people if they're just finding out they have endo to be aware of their surgery options and what you've done and what's worked for you.
Right. So there's two different types of surgeries, and I'm going to speak about the United States right now in terms of what's covered by insurance. I know the glorious Canada has different different things happening there. But in the United States, ACOG, the American College of Gynecology, has one code for endosurgery, and it's called an ablation surgery. And what ablation surgery does is that it burns away the endo lesions. Now, if you have endo lesions in your bowels or other areas that are too, as a lot of people say, difficult or dangerous to burn away, they're going to leave them behind, which can be really problematic for people with endo to have these lesions left behind on places that are very serious places that can become more inflamed and create more issues. With excision surgery, what they're able to do is excise the endo. You can kind of think of it as, if you had a wart on your arm, burning it away as opposed to excising it. So you're able to really get that endo out, and you're able to excise it on those more sensitive areas. I don't necessarily think that ablation is bad for everyone. If you don't have a lot of endo in, you know, very specific places where they can't burn it away, an ablation surgery might be great for you. The tricky thing is that when people have 6 to 10 ablation surgeries and they're not being told that that endo is being left behind, or they're being told, well, it's too dangerous to burn it away. It's not too dangerous if it was excised. It's just that that particular doctor does not have the skill set to excise that endo. So those are the two types of surgery, so ablation and excision. Unfortunately, right now in the United States, like I said, we have one insurance code. So an excision surgery is 95% of the time out of pocket. I mean, my last surgery, just to give you a number, was $20,000. that I had to pay for and that I have insurance. So I think that if you're able to, I have heard of success cases where people, petition their insurance company. They take a long time to pursue that to get it covered, or at least part of it covered. But a lot of times with endo, I mean, my last surgery was an emergency surgery because I had a giant cyst that ruptured. I didn't have time to contact the insurance company and fight for myself. So if you do have that time, I think it's a great way to at least try to get the surgery that you deserve for your body.
And over the years, how many different surgeries have you had?
I've had 3 surgeries. Um, I've had I've had I've had 2 ablation and 1 excision. So my last surgery, and again, I'm more educated now, right? Like I didn't know that there was even a difference of surgeries, but when I had my last cyst that grew to 10 centimeters, I knew that that had to be removed. And I thought, if I have to get this removed, then I also want my endo excised. And, there's not a huge pool of doctors that are doing this surgery either. So I had to go to New York to get that surgery.
Every time a cyst ruptures, does that mean you have to have surgery, or does sometimes the body just absorb
No,
that?
like my last cyst that ruptured, my body absorbed it. I mean, it was excruciatingly painful, but the one that had ruptured was 10 centimeters. It was attached to my ovary. It was hanging. It was something that had to be removed from my body.
Let's talk about some of the other lifestyle factors, things that you've found make the biggest difference over the years when it comes to your endo and managing the symptoms.
Yeah, so we talked about food, movement, stress management. I mean, geez, as I write in the book, my nickname used to be Stressica. I stressed because I was a little bit late to this interview and I'm still thinking about that. It's something that I am constantly working on, is managing my stress. I find that when I manage my stress, my endo is infinitely better. And again, this was a challenge for me to find things that I felt like I wanted to do. I tried the meditation route of sitting down 20 minutes a day. I might have sat down once a day. It wasn't something that I could really tap into. Maybe I could in the future, but not right now. So I find other ways to manage my stress. I love jigsaw puzzles, and that might sound weird, but when you're focused on one thing in front of you, it's kind of hard to focus on other things that you're stressed about. Mindful walking, which again might sound very woo-woo, but all mindful walking is to go outside without music, a podcast, your phone, and just walk. Like, how often do we do that? How often do we just turn off our brains and just walk? And that for me, I mean, it's difficult at first. I remember the first times that I did it, I still had my headphones in my ears just so I could like kind of feel more comfortable doing it. But shutting off my brain, mindful walking, puzzles, and just saying no to things also is they're huge stress management tools for me.
That makes sense.
Do you ever do mindful walking?
Not enough, let's put it that way. Yeah,
Okay.
no, I'm somebody that struggles with, putting aside a podcast or
Hmm.
even music, or a lot of times my wife and I'll go for walks, and now we have a young daughter, so all of us will go as a family. So if it comes down to time by myself where I'm just with myself and my thoughts, it happens and I'm aware of the importance of it, but I definitely need to make it a priority more.
Yeah. It's hard at first.
You feel guilty, especially as, somebody that's been a go-getter for so many years. Myself, I just, I like to go, 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 get things done, check things off the list,
Right.
and it just feels unproductive. So, which is
Yeah.
just something I need to deal with and wrap my head
Hmm.
around and keep working at, because I know the value is there, and it's, yeah, all about balance.
Yes.
And when it comes to endo, I don't think you're at this point in your life yet, but when it comes to menopause, perimenopause, when people get, up in age and their monthly cycle starts to change, what classically happens when people are
I
suffering
I
with endo and
am
they're not okay, you are.
I am in perimenopause right now.
Got it.
um
So let's talk about what some of those, if you're comfortable talking
yeah, of
about it, let's talk
course.
about some of the changes that you've noticed as you get to that different stage in your life. And as you prepare yourself, for menopause down the line, What can you expect when it comes to endo?
Yeah, I've noticed that my periods are getting closer together, which feels rude when you have endo. It's like you want to make these more often. But I've definitely noticed that my periods are closer together. I've definitely noticed mood shifts are a little bit more intense. I know that, just through, I worked with a doctor in my book, Dr. Goldstein, who's an excision surgeon and has endo herself. And, in the section that we wrote about menopause, it's a small section, but, she talks about for people with endo, sometimes leading up to menopause, it can get worse before you hit menopause, which is not always a fun thing to hear. But I think that's why it's so important, if you can, to start introducing these tools and practices before you reach that tougher time before you hit menopause, because then I feel like at least you're in a position to be a little bit more in tune with your body, to notice the changes, and to feel like, okay, I have some tools that might not wipe this out completely, but I'm at least prepared to at least help manage this. So, I'm preparing myself for that. I think it's something that I feel really grateful that I do have had this last 10 years of cultivating these things and being open to change and knowing that my body is changing, because I think that this would have hit me very, very hard. Very hard.
Jessica, say you were able to go back and tell your 20-year-old self something that you have today, something you've learned along your endo journey. This could be really helpful for somebody who's, just maybe finding out they have endo or just learning about some of the symptoms from hearing a conversation, realizing, they might want to get things looked into. What would you tell yourself to ease your mind and to help guide your younger self?
This is the third time that you've made me emotional, but I would just tell myself to have more compassion. I just like, I just, even recently when this cyst burst, and, going to the doctor yesterday and finding out that it did in fact burst. And in that moment, I said, wow, I wish you would have had more compassion for yourself that day that that happened, because I was mad at myself for pushing myself too hard. I was a little bit frustrated that I didn't say, wow, just take care of yourself in this moment. I felt like, well, is my husband going to be annoyed that he has to cook again or have to take care of our son again? So I think, to my 20-year-old self and to myself now, I'm constantly trying to have more compassion for myself. Because as you mentioned, as being a go getter, being type A, feeling like, I mentioned in my brain, I can kind of accomplish anything. It's just stopping and saying, you actually have a pretty severe chronic condition and you're doing a really good job managing it. And you need to have more compassion for yourself. So that compassion is something I wish that my younger self had.
And how do you go about instilling that in yourself other than being aware of it?
Yeah, I write pretty extensively about self compassion in the book. And because it was a newer concept for me, probably in the last 5 years. And just, Dr. Kristen Neff does a lot of work around self compassion. She has two great books about it. But it's really telling your body and your mind, and this might sound cheesy at first, but there's actually proof that this works. I am here to support you. What do you need? And and it's not standing in front of a mirror and saying how pretty and great you are. It's telling your body, what do you need right now? So in that moment with the cyst situation and being in pain, instead of beating myself up, which I usually practice self-compassion, but I wasn't in that mindset that day, I could have said, what do you need right now? Is it a episode of The Real Housewives? Is it a fizzy water? Like, what is it? And when we practice self-compassion, it's telling your nervous system, it's telling your brain, I am here to care for you. And that automatically helps you just calm down. And it's something I'm continuing to work on, but it has been the biggest game changer for me when I do practice self-compassion.
I think a really important part of this conversation is the fact that you're sharing the positive changes that you've experienced when you've made these diet and lifestyle changes, but also sharing the fact that, you're still dealing with this condition. It's not something that goes away. Like relatively recently, you had your cyst burst. You just found out about, confirmed that yesterday. So even as somebody who is aware and applying this diet and lifestyle, you still, it's still something that you deal with. Maybe not every day, but it's part of your life. And I think for somebody listening to this, and if they're diagnosed already, or if they think this might be something that they're suffering from and they're going to get diagnosed, to have a realistic sense of what they can do, and not to necessarily think that all of a sudden they're going to go on a vegan diet and be cured, is an important part of this conversation. The realisticness of what this is. So can you talk a little bit more about that, and having a realistic idea of what somebody can expect?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always like to say, I mean, it's with my book, it's having more good days than bad. I mean, and I know that's not to be a downer. It's just the reality of living with endo is something that I will be living with until I hit menopause. And I mean, even then, still, I will, if I still might have endo in my body, I might not be having periods anymore. And, something that's so important to me and such a huge theme of my book is celebrating my wins. And it's not always easy to do, but like I said earlier in this conversation, I still wake up on the days of my period and I feel proud that I can get out of bed because that's not something that I could do before. And I feel proud that I cook now. That was not something I did before. And yeah, it's not always easy, but I also think about what if I wasn't doing these things for myself? How would I feel then? I don't know where I would be. I would probably be in bed right now. And so, yeah, I also think that it's incredibly important to talk to someone if you can, whether that's a therapist online, a therapist that you meet in person, hopefully someday soon. It's so important to work on your mental health with endo, with the physical health as well. I call them friendos, friends with endo. I think it's so powerful to have one person in your life that has endo that you can talk to. Most of my friends with endo, my friendos, we don't even really talk about endo. We talk about TV, we talk about things that we ate, but I know that person gets it. And I think that when you have endo, it can feel like the loneliest place to be. And not feeling alone in this, I swear, is half the battle. So, yeah, I think there is a lot of hope for us. And I think it's defining your best with endo and knowing that every day might not be the most amazing, but to strive to have a lot of good days.
Well, that first step to not feeling alone is to share your story. And Jessica, I'm just curious, along your journey, you not only shared your story with people that are closest to you, but now you've written a book, and you've gone public and shared your journey and your story, which is just so amazing to again, for people out there that might not have somebody close to them with endo, they can connect with you or connect with your story. So at least in a small way, have that, what you're talking about there. But where along your journey for you did you decide to share that beyond family and friends? Like, decide to go public with it, and how do people respond to it?
Yeah, I mean, so when my diet changed and it changed my entire life, it almost annoyed me that no one else had ever told me about it. It was annoying to me that, yes, food cannot cure endo, but I was actually getting out of bed and I felt compelled to tell people that. I just, you know, I don't know. I just couldn't not keep that under wraps that this little thing, which are turned out to be a big thing, was helping me. So I don't know. I guess I've never really been a shy person either. So it was just something that I felt like I had to share. And I think the reaction to that was getting messages from people saying, this is the first time I ever felt seen, or, oh my gosh, seeing the list of symptoms that you just posted are the symptoms I've been dealing with for the last 20 years. It's just with endometriosis, awareness is so critical because we don't, most people with endo don't even know all of the symptoms of endo. So being able to see a list can change your whole life. I wish I had seen a list when I was in my teens and 20s. So yeah, I don't know, man. I just felt like I had to share it.
And when you did, how therapeutic was that for you? Just getting it out there and off your chest, one, and secondarily, just, seeing the response from these people in your circle online that were being positively impacted with this work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's a mix of emotions, right? I mean, you feel so happy that it's helping people, but then you're also like, what is wrong with this system that someone is getting diagnosed from reading a cookbook? I think that it's just and it's just made me want to push more and to get the message out more because I am proud that I'm helping people get diagnosed, but your doctor should be helping you do that. I think that yeah, so it's a wide range of emotions. Obviously, the first is joy, but the second is sometimes it makes me fired up that like why isn't more happening?
And do you feel like since you have been involved in this world and this is what your message is in the world you're in, do you see that it is heading in that direction? And secondarily, what would you say, and you probably know this being in the world, but what are the stats? How many women are being impacted by this?
Well, we like to say now it's hard to say women, so we say 1 in 10 people born with a vagina, we'll say, have endometriosis. So 1 in 10. That is bananas. And it's something that I always like to talk about is that you go to the gynecologist, you see a pamphlet for breast cancer, you see a pamphlet for STDs. Where's the pamphlet for endo? Like, where is that? If 1 in 10 people that are born with a vagina are impacted by this, we need more information out there. There are incredible people creating awareness. And I think what's cool about endo is I think that people are creating awareness in their own way. I wrote a book. Some people are creating films. You don't have to create a film or write a book to create awareness. Talk to your neighbor about it. I mean, I just delivered a bunch of books a couple of months ago. I took them to the post office, and the person that was helping me check out was like, "What is this? Is this your book?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she read the back. She's like, "This describes me." It's like, you can talk to anybody about this. And I mean, it might be awkward at first to talk about periods and painful sex and things like that, but it's just awareness is so critical for this condition that I just encourage anyone that has it, just talk to one person about it.
That makes sense. Well, you're doing a great job of getting the message out there, sharing your inspirational story. And Jessica, I'm just so happy for you for how far you've come along in your journey and how well you're doing. And I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story and sharing all this information because it's just so important. And I know it's going to help a lot of people.
Thank you so much. It means so much that you're helping raise awareness too.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jessica. Any other areas other than people getting a copy of your book, Know Your Endo? How can people connect with you after the show?
Sure. I have an Instagram called Know Your Endo where we share endo wins every Wednesday, which I love. People DM me with their wins. Today's win was that someone is learning to ride a skateboard at 27, something that she never thought would be possible with their endo. And then my website is jessicamurnane.com where you can check out my other book, One Part Plant, too.
Awesome. I'm going to link it all up in the show notes. Jessica, thanks again.
Thank you.